Welcome back. This is part 4 of needle felting the Elephant Shrew. It's Natasha with Spirit Animals Art. So this is continuing. We worked on the feet a little bit last time. Now we're going to put a little bit of a belly, a chest. Fatten this one up a bit. You're just going to roll some pillows or puffs. Tack those down really good. And I'll continue to reference the first one that I did. That one's a little easier to do because I don't have to pay attention to how I'm stabbing and make sure I'm not getting in the way and things like that. So I have that one the way I want it, so I'm just going to try to make this one look as much like that one as possible, with its own personality, of course. I think these little ones are going to be a pair, a male and a female. Interesting, these elephant shrews, they mate for life. They really don't live in a family group. They live with their mate, but in separate sleeping dens. They get together just for amorous activities, but they mate for life, so they're loyal, and I'm sure they get together for, luncheons or some such, but they're not super social. They don't have to be up in each other's business, so I think that sounds like a pretty perfect relationship. With Valentine's Day coming up, this would be a perfect little pair, I believe. So I've got a little chest and a little belly. I'm going to start wrapping the legs a little bit. I'm not going to go on to that back part of the leg because we're going to put color on that part. Just making this back muscle piece. Do that on each side. Making sure I'm felting it down on the outside and the inside. And I want to use about the same amount of wool on each side. That way you don't have one leg thicker or lumpier than the other, and you can pull some of the wool off if you need to. You don't have to felt it down too much. We want it to be poofy because this is like the stuffing inside. This is where the rib cage and the organs and everything is, so it doesn't need to be firmly felted. We want it to still be flexible and squishy. So I use this lighter color on the bottoms of the feet. I'm going to use a little bit darker color. I believe this may be Acorn. It's a little bit redder. I think the color is called Acorn. It's in the Serafina Fiber Art, the pelt section, yes. In the house carded wool section too. I'm just rolling a thin strip and tacking it down really good. I'm going to do that on each of the legs to begin. Just comparing them. They're not going to be exact, but we do want to get them similar. And I'm also trying to remember what I did. I didn't write it down, so I'm trying to remember what I did in an approximation of an order that I did it in. So I'm wanting to get some fiber onto the feet because we're going to make some feet pads, but we need something for that to stick to, so we're going to need a little more fiber on there. So if you see what I did, I took the fiber and I cut it in half and then mixed it again. We didn't quite need the long fibers. The shorter fibers work a little bit better, blend better. This one I'm using is a spiral. I believe it's probably a 38 spiral. The reason why I'm using that is because the spiral slips between the wires easier than a triangle. Triangle will get you started and get you to get it attached, but then the spiral will help not break your needle. Don't be surprised if you do break a few needles. You have to learn to be bouncy, to bounce off of the wire and not be so stiff, because when you are, that is a surefire way to break either the wire or your needle, and the wire's a lot stiffer than the needle, so the needle is going to lose. I'm roughing it up. See, I'm massaging it with my fingers, getting it scuffed up and scruffy, and then felting it down. So we don't want those lines in there. So I'm adding more to the feet. I'm comparing because I don't want to get the foot fatter or chunkier than the other one. I like the way I had the other one, so I'm going to try to emulate that. And I'm even going to snip. I wrapped around and it went around the toes, and I need to have wool between the toes. So I felted that down pretty good, and then I just snipped it, and then I felt it between the toes. This is a part that just takes a lot of time and a lot of stabbing and a lot of patience. So if you decide that you need tiny little details like these toes and claws on your animal, be prepared to pay the price in time, but the reward is pretty good. So I'm using this darker color. I'm trying to remember the name. It is, I can't remember at the moment, but it's the same one we used on the diker. So I'm just making a little ball and putting it where the pad would be on the foot. And I believe I'm using a triangle needle, a pretty thick triangle needle. Oh, yeah. So you kind of have to just test your different needles. A thinner needle helps to get something like this. Like a thicker triangle, like maybe a 38 triangle, would get it on there, and then to get it tacked down really good, you might want to go maybe for a 40. But you have to be very careful with the 40 because it's so thin that it is much more likely to break. So this is where experience, time, and just paying attention to what feels right and what works best comes in handy. Making little toe pads on the toes, and it's pretty difficult to get it on here. There's not a lot of fiber to work with. So we're just taking our time and going bit by bit until it is the way that we like it. So I have the little pads tacked down and I'm roughing it up. This helps to felt it also with the friction of your hand. Heat and friction, that's two key elements to get things felted. And here in a minute I'm going to put more fiber on the top of the foot. So don't worry if you get some of the dark poking through when you're doing the paw pads on the bottom, and if some of the dark pokes through the top, we're going to cover that up. And it's okay if there's a little, because just we'll blend it in and it'll just look like he's got some variation in coloring, or maybe he got a little dirty on his feet. Just little tiny bits, tiny bits here and there. I'm laying this straight down. You remember we wrapped it before, now we're going the other direction. And so I cut my fiber, mixed it back in together, and now I've laid it down over the toes, because as I felt, I'm going to just go in between the toes. Just take your time. It'll begin looking like you want it to look. So now I'm going to trim any parts that have poked through from the top, trimming those little pads. And later I might do an experiment on the pads and do a little bit of watered down glue. I've done something like that before and it worked out pretty good, so we'll see if we can do something this tiny successfully. I think that's looking pretty good. Pretty similar right there. So you're just going to keep doing this. Same method on the other foot. And here in a minute I will show the back foot, and then you'll just repeat the same thing we do on that back foot on the other back foot. This is a triangle. I'm showing that I'm using a stiffer, probably 38 gauge triangle to get this started. And later I will switch to the thinner needle, which is the purple, which I believe is a 40 or a 42. And I can't remember. It may be a triangle also. I'm roughing up the paw pad. Don't be afraid to really get in there and do what you need to do to get that fiber on there. Bit by bit, it's going to look like you want it to. With more practice and more finesse, you'll really be pleased with what you can make. This purple one I'm using is actually a 40 spiral. So that really helps get in between the wires. The spiral just helps it slip, but it also helps it to felt, it being so fine. I get these from Living Felt, and they have a handy dandy little card that has the colors, and that way you can, when you forget what your needle is, you can look back on your card and see what it is. So do the front 2 feet, and just like we did the front, we're going to do the back. I'm going to let you finish that out yourself, and I'm going to show you here. I'm just putting a little wool on the neck and the head. It's bulking it up a little bit. And then I'll need to put some on the tops of the legs. Start getting these little muscles on here. Or hers. I'm not sure who will be the girl and who will be the boy. I guess they will decide that in the end. I also need a little fiber bump on the back because they stay pretty hunched over, and that doesn't translate all the way with just bending the wire, so we're bulking that up. Oh, they're starting to look like a couple now. Thanks you guys for watching. Please subscribe for more videos.